And we can get into that space where we do attract a lot of negative things. But if you expect good, you will find that as you do these micro steps, as you are purposeful and live in your life, that good comes into your life. And it's a matter of your mindset. And one of the tools is to be thankful, to be grateful, and to expect more good things to show up in your life.
I love that.
So the next word is pivot. If you know anything about basketball, the player holding the ball, as long as he keeps one foot planted, he can move in any direction without drawing a whistle or without getting a foul. So that's called a pivot foot. He'll pivot and be able to move around, to be nimble. But also, to pivot means to make a turn. But it's not necessarily a 180-degree turn. It's not necessarily an entire turning in the opposite direction. It's a shift to do something different. We actually talked a little bit about that when we talked earlier about shaking and shifting. So the P in pivot is to prioritize. Prioritize your well-being, plant your feet, plant your flag, and plant good seed. What I mean by that is, what things are you doing that you're just doing because it's what you've always done, what other people expect you to do? Prioritize. If you want to declutter your house, prioritize which room you're going to do first, which box in that room you're going to do first. Prioritize what's important. Plant your feet means to make a decision and stick with it. Hold yourself high. Hold yourself to good standards. Plant your flag, own it. You know, when invading armies in history would go someplace and they would fight the war and win, they would plant their flag so you know they were there. When we went into space, the astronauts planted a flag because that says, I'm here. So the same thing in your life. Plant your flag. I am here. Plant good seed in relationships, in the work that you do. Become known as a person who plants good seed. The I is to ignite. Ignite the fire and the courage within you. And part of prioritizing and planting good seed goes all the way back to knowing what your principles, values are, and your ideals. So as you take these micro steps, as you begin to know who you are, as you begin to prioritize yourself, your well-being, and what you do with your time, you will become more confident. You will ignite the fire within you. You will ignite that courage. You will begin to see the picture that you've painted for yourself, right?
Yes.
Venture. Claim your voice, direct and reframe your conversations. If you've spent a lot of your time gossiping or just talking for the sake of talking, and you look at the future vision that you have for yourself, and you don't want to be stuck in a place where you've been before, do something different. Redirect the conversation. Reframe those conversations rather than saying, oh, I have to do XYZ. Maybe you can change that and say, oh, I get to do this. So
Definitely.
that by changing your conversation, you actually build yourself up.
Yes, I agree. For me, it was a lot of paying attention to what was going through my head, and there was a lot of conversations happening, not on my watch even. Sometimes I wasn't aware it was all happening back there, but
Right.
I had to start being purposeful and mindful of that and actually pay attention to the words that were running through my head. And like you said,
Yes.
shifting the words and practicing gratitude, practicing positive affirmations, and just reframing that self-talk. It gives you so much relief, and you get to create a different you from that.
Yes, what you just said, I get excited about that because that's what pivoting is all about, is creating the you want to be. And the important two words, you create. Life doesn't just happen to you. I found my darkest moments was when I allowed life to happen to me. Those are my darkest moments because I was not participating in my own life. And it does begin with taking captive your own thoughts.
That really hit me just now because growing up, I was very shy. So sometimes I wouldn't voice out my opinions or talk, but that was on me. I had to realize that I was allowing life to happen to me, around me, for me. I wasn't in control of it because of preconditions,
Right.
beliefs, whatever it was.
Yeah. So we'll continue with our pivot. Occupy. This is one of my favorite ones. Occupy space with confidence. Keep showing up for yourself and create vision for your life. And this is repeated because I said it earlier. But in this case, I'm talking about using your voice. A lot of times when you've been in relationships where you felt beaten down or you felt you haven't had a voice, you become quite mousy. And not just romantic relationships. I was a very precocious, very talkative, talk all the time. So a lot of my life, I was always too much. And then I got into a relationship where I found I was disappointed. And over time, my voice became softer, not just my speaking voice, my entire being became
Mm.
smaller. And I was in a marriage where my partner was very well known, very gregarious. He had fans, people knew him. And so I was always in the shadow. It was unconscious, but a choice I made. And so I say to people, occupy space. Let your being be experienced. Let your voice be heard. If you're somebody who is very shy and won't talk, start talking. Start letting people know, even with friends, no, I don't really want to go out tonight. Tonight, I'm going to stay home and watch a movie. And people might shame you for that. But as you become more familiar with yourself, as you walk in these micro steps and you ignite the courage that is within yourself, you can ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? And do what you want to do. I'm not talking about being destructive, obviously. This is all about the positive side of life, making choices that are good for you, for your family, for the people around. If you have children, that you can be a good example for your children. I realize it's not a good example for my daughter to see me being marginalized and treated with such disdain, and for me to constantly be cowering. And when I say cowering, there was no physical abuse or anything. But when you get to a point where you're carrying so much heavy load, you feel beaten down. I look at myself in pictures and I can see how sad my eyes were. Occupy space with confidence, speak up, and keep showing up for yourself. Because honestly, if you don't, who will? If you don't stand up for yourself, who will? So occupy space and transform. Educate yourself in areas you want to grow in and watch your life change from broken to beautiful.
Mm.
Very much like the other words, the last one tends to be almost a result. As you do these things, as you prioritize, as you ignite the fire within and the courage within you, as you venture out and claim your voice and venture even into adventure, as you occupy space, you will see your life begin to change because you will begin to change. And that's what I experienced in my life. I began to change when I started going, wait a minute, no. Yeah, I'm giving you an example. Like I mentioned before, I'm a believer. And one of the things growing up as a teenager, learned a lot of scripture. We had camps where we were challenged to learn scripture and we had quizzes, and I know a lot of scripture. But I got married to a man who is in the ministry. And so he was an associate pastor and all of that stuff. And ever an argument came up, he knew the scriptures and he would quote scriptures. And there were times when I just go, well, I know scripture, but I didn't argue. It was not important for me to win an argument over scripture. However, when I finally woke up from the days and said, I can't do this anymore, I need to make a change in my life, he took it upon himself to try to bring me back to my role as his wife. And for me, it happened even before the divorce that I just said, I can't do this, is not working. We are not really in a relationship. And so when he started quoting scriptures, I finally started saying, well, yes, I hear that scripture and I will raise you with this scripture. And I felt almost like he was surprised that I actually knew scripture. So as I started speaking up for myself, I grew stronger. I saw myself transform. I was able to say no to things that I would never have said no to before, that I should have said no to. I began to say yes to things that I wouldn't have said yes to before, that I should have said yes to. So it's that pivot point where you start making changes in your life. You'll see yourself and your life change. And this doesn't have to be combative. It doesn't have to be a result of blown up fights. It's a simple matter of letting my yes be yes, letting my no's be no. And I began to change. My life began to transform. So remember, we're doing steps, right? Steps back to me. S for stop, T for toss, E for evaluate and evoke, P for pivot, and S for shine.